at that point, you're not there to play it safe. Like if you're not taking risks, you're not competing.
It's empowering, I mean, anybody who's done a CrossFit workout, you finish your CrossFit workout and you're like, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
Like a hunger for competition and like that super intense structure, routine. I still had that desire.
Listen to the way people feel and the motivations for doing the things that they did. It was like they were describing me to a T.
I'm not trying to solve everything for you, but I know that sometimes you just need somebody to listen.
Learned the most is how to fill my cup by filling others.
Welcome to the Hungry Dog Barbell Podcast. Join me as I talk with passionate people about their life's failures and successes, and most importantly, what keeps them hungry for more.
What up, dogs? Welcome back to another episode of the Hungry Dog Barbell Podcast. I'm joined today by Melanie Greenberg. Mel, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I just talked about it. I still have the injury going on, going into the last week of the Open. And I wanted to ask you, Melanie, are you doing the Open right now, the CrossFit Open?
I am doing the Open. Yes, this is my 10th Open.
Oh, 10 of them. I think I'm on like year 7 or 8. And you signed up like through HQ and everything?
I sure did, every year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, is this like, is your training still the same that it's always been throughout the 10 years? Or what's it look like right now?
Absolutely not. This has actually been a really hard year for me. So this Open has not been my favorite Open because I am not in the shape that I was in even a year and a half, 2 years ago. And yeah, so this is the community. It's for the community this year, and really enjoying seeing other people like hit PRs and milestones. So,
did you have any doubts about signing up this year? Or were you like, as soon as the date dropped, you were like, I'm going for it?
Oh no, I have doubts every year. I'm really hard on myself, and especially like the last couple of years, getting into my career and shifting my priorities. Every year, I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, but I'm a coach. My husband is our gym owner. Like, I have to do it. I'm part of the community, So,
yeah.
And I never regret it. So,
yeah, that's what I try to tell people, like year after year, like you go through all these trials throughout the Open, and some of them could be like self-induced, that you could be hard on yourself, like you just said. But then you like learn a little bit about yourself at the end. Or if it doesn't go that far, you just had some fun with your friends, like doing fitness, the same thing that a lot of us would be doing either way,
Exactly.
So you just mentioned it, that you were going through like a career change or like progressing in your career. What is it that you do?
So I am a sex therapist. And so I work at a practice in Philadelphia called Therapy for Women Center, but we do see people of all genders.
Nice.
And so COVID hit. And then I started like really launching into my career. And so those two things kind of like hijacked fitness as my priority and fitness as something that I loved doing. It became more of a chore, which exercise shouldn't be a chore. It should be something that you enjoy. But it's been a hard comeback, but we're on the up of it. So
That's amazing. What led you to becoming a sex therapist? Like, what was it in your mind? Like, did you have anything that you wanted to do before that when you were focusing on fitness? What like brought you there?
So I have been in therapy on and off since I was 15 years old. Yeah, I struggled with an eating disorder, anorexia and bulimia pretty young. And it like really had a hold on my life for like a good 10 years. And then once I found CrossFit, that's kind of when like things shifted for me. I stopped trying to lose weight. Of course, I wanted to like look fit, but I started like, I'm really strong. And I was like, oh, like now we can focus on this goal of like, how much can I lift? How much faster can I get? And then, with the help of my husband and other like friends in the CrossFit space, I started learning more about like how to feed and fuel your body for fitness. And so food started to change for me too. And so therapy has always been a big part of my life. And originally I thought I wanted to go into eating disorder recovery therapy, but then I realized like that just wasn't for me. And I've always been a very sexuality oriented person. It's always been a huge part of who I am. And so there's a program at Widener. And so I started that in 2016. Took me 4 years.
Oh, so for a while, you've been working on that. Nice.
Yeah, it took me 4 years because I got 2 master's degrees. So that was a really challenging time in my life.
Oh man, I bet.
But during that time, there was like a good year and a half or 2 years where I was like working part-time or I had been laid off. And so I was able to really focus on my fitness.
Yeah.
And I became fairly like locally competitive. And then, I was like really, really lean and cut and like fast. But then like, life changes.
Yeah. You just had other focuses, other things that you really want to like key in on, and make your passion. That's great to hear that you started therapy at like a young age and like started to try to get on like the right path or a better path for yourself, I should say. Like back then, like, were you apprehensive to therapy at all back then, or was it like in a positive light to you?
Oh, I did not want to go. When I was 15, it was 2007. Therapy was still kind of like what's wrong with you? Like only broken people go to therapy.
For sure. I feel like now, like we are starting to destigmatize it, like a little by a little. But for sure, I grew up in that same time. I think I might have been 15 or 16 around that time. I'm 31 now. So I think that, like the ages are like lining up. And I've talked with so many people from like our generation that like someone was trying to send them to therapy instead of them seeking out on their own. Of course, because they're so young, but it was this huge stigma around it. And it's like exactly what you said. What's wrong with you? Right. And that doesn't make me want to open up to someone about what I'm going through,
No.
So how did you get more comfortable with it? Did it just take time?
I think it took time. My first therapist was like an older man. And as like a 15-year-old girl with an eating disorder, I was like,
yeah,
you don't know what I'm going through.
This ain't it.
It was not. But yeah, then I started, being able to choose my own therapist, which was really important to me, like seeking out people that I felt were a good fit for me. And then honestly, I don't think that therapy really like clicked until I was like in school to be a therapist myself. And to be fair, like our brains aren't even fully formed until we're 25. And that's about the time when I went back to school. And that's about the time when I started to be able to actually like process things.
Yeah. Like what you were doing with this actual therapist, what you could do with people, what you wanted to do. That's awesome. In that time period between there, like you're still going to therapy. Did you have anything else on your mind that you like might want to do with your life? Like any direction?
I went to school originally to be a journalist. And it was like kind of like, it was my senior year when I realized I did not want to be a journalist. I did not really enjoy the media and everything that comes along with it. And a friend back then was like, well, you're going to become a social worker anyway. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then like 5 years later, I started going to school to be a social worker.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. Sometimes people can just predict it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're like an expressive person, right? Like that's kind of coming through in the conversation now. Like you want to be a journalist, you get to talk to people for a living. Were you always that way?
Yeah. I don't know if you're into astrology, but like all of my signs are fire signs. Like I am the middle daughter of like 4 girls. So like I love attention. I do. And I love to talk and I love to connect with people. I'm an extreme extrovert. So yeah, I've always been this way.
Did that like, how do you looking back now think that played with your eating disorder? Do you think you were like obsessive about looking a certain way because of getting the attention or wanting the attention? So you felt like you had to look a certain way. Do you ever think about those things?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was bullied. Like pretty much, looking back, I was like an average size, like healthy teenager, prior to restricting. But all of my friends got attention from boys and I didn't. And, I was a little bit of like a polarizing person. Like I'm very opinionated and I've always pretty much spoken my mind. And society tells like women and girls to make yourself smaller. And I did that in all areas. I made my body smaller. I made my voice smaller. I made my world smaller.
Yeah. So like you had a lot of opinions, like, and you're a confident person now, but that like silenced that for a while, I guess. Was therapy like the catalyst to help you become bigger again and like express everything and show what people like how much room you could take up? Or like, where did that come from?
I think part of that did come from like the CrossFit community, honestly. And that's not to like, make this like a corny thing, but just like the community allows for people to be loud and big and expressive and confident.
Supports that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also like surrounding myself with people who accepted that and getting rid of people in my life who wanted me to stay smaller was a huge, huge piece of like coming back into who I am.
Were you an athlete before? Like what made you walk into a CrossFit gym for the first time? Like what made you walk in there?
Yeah. So I played sports my whole life growing up. I played soccer, basketball, field hockey. And then I stopped playing sports and I was a theater kid. So I did the musicals and the plays. And then, but like exercise was always a big part of my life, obviously, as someone with like body image issues. So I started exercising at 16, like at a gym. And then like, I just couldn't find what I really liked. I did spin, I did yoga, I did Zumba, I did kickboxing, I tried all the things. And a friend of mine at like one of my first jobs out of college was like, hey, there's a CrossFit gym down the street. Like I do CrossFit now. I think you'd be really good at it. And an ex-boyfriend of mine had told me that I would be really good at it because I was really strong. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do it if you told me to do it. I wish I'd listened to him then, but so I started going to CrossFit in 2013. I took like a foundations class in December 2013 and I was hooked right away. Like I loved it. I loved the variance of it. I get bored easily, but I still like structure. So I like the idea of like, this is what you're doing, someone telling me what to do. But it's not the same thing every day. And sure. I was really interested in learning how to move a barbell. And I'd never touched a barbell in my life at that point. So that's how I learned. I was like, well, this will be a good way to do that. And then for a few years, I focused on powerlifting because I was really good at like the three big movements.
3-man lifts, yeah.
Yeah. And then once I made my way to my now husband's gym is when I shifted my focus back to CrossFit.
That's awesome. So like, I know we talked about in the email that talking about sex in a CrossFit gym can sometimes be taboo. And it's kind of weird because it's a part of health, right? Yeah. I remember at my first CrossFit gym, there was a time there was like 4 women that were like in their 25 to 40 age range that were like all pregnant. And one of the coaches made a comment like, healthy people have more sex, right? Oh, yeah. So why is this not a part of health that's like majorly discussed? There's not a whole lot of it's coming out now a little bit more, but there's not like a whole lot of mainstream talk about that part of sex. So my question for you is, does your job and the CrossFit world collide? Do you ever talk about it in the box? Does it feel taboo to you?
I think at one point when I was feeling like I needed to like dull who I was and being told that talking about sex isn't professional or appropriate. And now like I am a sex therapist. So actually it is my professional job to do it.
It's literally the most professional.
Literally my job. It's so empowering.
I actually do it for a profession.
I love to talk. I'll talk about it with anyone who will listen to me. I try not to make people uncomfortable because like I am, I have a mouth of a sailor. Like I'm a little raunchy.
That's funny.
But I do talk about it with people because like if we want to break it down, like our country was formed by Puritans, right? They were formed by Puritans who were pissed off and wanted to get away from like sex and all of those things over in England. So this country was formed on the idea that like sex is bad. And that has seeped into so many parts of who we are, like still now. And sex is part of our mental health, our physical health. And you're right that like people who are active have more and better sex. And I think in a CrossFit gym, like CrossFit is such an intimate thing. Like it's emotional and you get really invested in people. And I mean, just out of our gym alone, there have been 8 marriages.
Wow. How long have you guys been open?
2015 is,
Oof.
I think, when Justin opened. And yeah, since then there's been 8 marriages.
That's a lot. That's dope, dude. That's a great stat, you know?
Yeah.
That's
So,
amazing.
I mean, people, when your endorphins are going and your hormones are level, like your libido is higher.
Right. And you just like enlightened something to me, right? Think about the Puritans and sex being demonized, right, in this country for so long, and how that plays into all other parts of society. But like, what do you think about with that in mind, if I bring up that like sex sells? Because it does to a certain extent, but like, why do you think that is so much, especially in the modern day? It's more like sex sells means like the risque, right? But
oh yeah, I think it's the taboo of it. I think it's like that secretive thing. But I also like, if I'm going to get on my soapbox here, like the patriarchy has created the idea that like women's bodies are to be policed and owned. So the patriarchy decides like you got to cover up your shoulders if you're in or in government in Mississippi. Like women have to cover up their shoulders now. But I want to see half naked women eating burgers on top of cars. So I think it's like that power aspect that like we decide when it's okay. And it's only when it's usually like conventionally attractive people, right? Like thin, white, blonde women, like that's what's acceptable.
Right. Only so basically it can only be sexy and risque and like yourself if they can monetize off of it, right? Like Absolutely. People, as far as someone else can sell it and monetize off of it, it's not just, it can't be just for you, you know?
It's not for pleasure. It's not for pleasure. Yeah. It's for money and power. Yeah.
For the gain of someone else. Yeah. But back to what you do for a job. So what would you describe like is your normal therapy with someone? Like what do people come to you for? How do you help people?
Sure. So my niche right now is working specifically either with like couples or women. I do have like clients that are just men who come to me. But like my niche is working with women and couples on intimacy issues. And a lot of times that looks like, we don't know how to communicate with each other. We don't know how to say what we need. We don't know how to express what we really want sexually. Some women who are like, I can't have an orgasm with a partner. I work on a lot of like anxiety and depression and like identity, life transition stuff. Like, people who are coming from their mid-20s into like their 30s, and adulthood isn't what we all anticipated it to be. And like, how do we navigate that?
Yeah. So Melody, did you ever have someone like you for yourself back then? How did your sexual journey go? Were you like open to trying things and expressive to your partner? Like, how was that road for you?
So yes, I was. And I think like a little bit before my time, right? I went to college in 2009 and I went to Cabrini, which is a small Catholic university. It was pretty progressive even when I was there. It's where I learned a lot about like feminism and social justice issues, but it was still a Catholic university. But at one point I had a blog talking about my sex life and I was like the girl with the sex blog on campus. And like, there was a lot of slut shaming, and then it was like, well, if you're going to call me a slut, then I'm going to double down and I'm going to be a slut. So, but a lot of that was like, I want to be validated. I want to feel desired. I want to prove something. It wasn't for my own pleasure at that point. But I did have a couple of partners where I was able to explore some kink and some things like that and figure out like, oh yes, this is something that I do like. And something that I really like to do with clients now is figuring out like, do you have desires? Do you have fantasies? Because desires and fantasies are different, right? Fantasy means you don't necessarily want it to happen, but it's still something that maybe gets you excited. Talking about like, is there a way that you can bring up like, I would like to try this in the bedroom with my partner. And then we have to kind of like undo a lot of the shame that comes with wanting things that are maybe seen as dirty or weird or bad.
Right. How do you like go about undoing that? Like teaching someone that, hey, this is a desire that you have and it's not wrong, you know?
Yeah.
How do you work with people on that?
Well, it's like, first of all, as long as it's like two consenting adults, like, and it's like, that's fine. As long as that's the baseline, right? That's pretty much all you need. I think shame finds its way into people's lives through religion, through family, through just like societal norms.
Yeah.
So what we work on is like, as a social worker, what I like to do is like, let's take this system that you're part of or that you were raised in, and let's look at the reasons why maybe like they wanted you to feel shame, or like, you know, why this is seen as like wrong. And so kind of like dissecting the values that you were taught versus the values that are actually yours.
Do you talk about that like outside of the shaming part? Like what values are? Do you talk about your own? Do you talk about them with your clients?
Yeah, so my practice is actually a really cool practice that is very open about like all of our therapists are in therapy themselves.
That's
and so
awesome.
Yeah, we want to be able to connect with people and say like, hey, I've been where you are. Like, I do get it. You know, obviously like not to our own benefit in session, like talking about my problems, but like,
Look how
hey,
cool
like,
I am, you know?
right. No, but really saying like, no, like I understand, like I too have OCD. Like I also have struggled with my body. And I can understand why this is happening for you. But yeah, we do talk about values a lot outside of sexuality. Like some people, you know, struggling with like, my partner wants a baby, but I don't.
Yeah.
How do you, okay, well, what are your values? Are your values that you want to be able to travel and, you know, have time to yourself and not have to give attention to another human? All right. And that's your value. What's your partner's value?
Yeah. And do they align? Exactly. Do you do like partner sessions? Do you work with like couples? Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
How was that? How was your first time like getting into that?
Oh my gosh. The first time I had a couple in session was so scary because now you have two people's, you know, perceptions of you, two people's thoughts of you. Like, what are they going to talk about when, you know, they leave my office or they sign offline? Like, what are they going to say about me? Right. Because when you have someone one-on-one, and it's a little bit different, like now these two people can be like, yo, what is she talking about? Or like, wow, like she really knows what she's, you know, it's very intimidating.
I bet it like that the intimacy of the three like sides coexisting together, you know, like, and they may all have different goals. So like on top of what you're saying, like they may have never communicated to each other the things that they are there to communicate, and that could be the issue. So now you have to be like the moderator in the middle, and it's like I'm not really trying to squash your guys' problems. I'm trying to like expose them and then lead you to the solution, you know?
Right.
So I bet that could be a whole lot.
I mean, yeah. I mean, are there times where I identify with one partner's like point of views more than the other? Yes, but I can't show bias.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a clearly like you cannot speak to your partner in this way, or like the way that you're treating them like is unfair, then I'll tell them that. But then also there's like that whole like when you get fired from like a client, it's like, all right, I know I'm not going to be everyone's therapist, but like, what did I do? Like, what was it that made them decide that I wasn't the one?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I had two therapists on 2 weeks ago. They talked about that. And it's just, they said it's a practice in wanting the greater good for them, hopefully, you know, like as they move on. But I want to just ask you, you talked about like showing bias to one side and having to hold that back. With you being so opinionated and so expressive, like, has that been like a big practice for you to like not give your like overarching opinion on someone's like ideals and stuff like that? How has that been?
Oh yeah, that's been a practice. I mean, like if you want to have a good view of who I am, like back in 2016, I was getting into internet fights with everyone, right? Like just like arguing with everyone on the like
in the comments.
in the comments. Like
Hell
I couldn't
yeah.
stop myself.
I love it.
And honestly, I think that learning that being louder and being angrier is not always going to necessarily get your point across to people is something that I've had to learn in my personal life and in my professional life. Like you can give everyone the facts and they're either going to take them or they're not. And in therapy, like it's the same thing with like one partner. If they just don't want to see that point of view, they're not going to.
Yeah. So we were talking about getting like personal with the clients, right? Like showing them that you can relate to it. And I wanted to ask you, like, you probably take on a lot of people's trauma and like just their low energy all the time. How do you like decompress from that and like not have their trauma become your own? How do you like move on from that?
Well, that is still a learning practice for me, which I think that's been part of the reason why motivation has been so hard for me. Right now, my husband and I, like, we live with my parents because we're saving for a house in this economy, in this housing market. And like, that's been really hard because I don't have a lot of space to then like decompress after difficult sessions. In the summer, it's a little bit easier. I go and I sit outside. Sometimes I have a glass of wine and sometimes I'll like smoke a bowl and just like sit out there and chill. Like
out.
I don't want anyone to talk to me for like 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I started reading a lot more, right? It's like a little bit of an escape. But that's like still something that I'm really trying to figure out, you know, because the big thing about like taking in people's trauma is that it makes you think of your own trauma. And then like, why is that person's story affecting how I feel so greatly? And then analyzing that. So then I take it to my therapist. She gets to hear about it.
Just dump it all on her. She can dump it on the next therapist. That's why it's so important. I was excited that you said that all the therapists on your guys' staff all go to therapy. It's like it's really important to have another outlet. I was talking to a therapist before, and she told me that she didn't have a therapist for like 8 months. And she said in the last 2 months, she cried every single day of that like 60-day period because like everything was starting to just come out that she had been holding in. It's like you got to talk to somebody. Hopefully, ideally it's a professional, you know, but talk to somebody out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I do primarily talk therapy. I don't do like different types of techniques that like some other therapists are trained in. And so what I'm doing is like I'm really in it in every session. And it does get heavy and it does get really tiring. And so, you know, really trying to build things in that bring joy to you, you know, that you can do, which is why like exercise has been hard because I'm not in the shape that I used to be. So it's not as joyful for me because I'm comparing myself to 2018 me.
Right.
So trying to find things that like bring me pleasure and joy, to try to like get out of that headspace is really important.
Yeah. So do you like journal right now? Are you like an artistry person? Like do anything like that?
Oh gosh, I wish I could do art. Like one of my I really do. I would love to take a ceramics class. I've always wanted to like, you know, throw pottery. That's a dream of mine. I could be terrible at it, but I would like to try it. I journal sometimes. I am like, you know, back to my journalism roots. I love to write. I don't love to journal. It's really hard for me because I'm so in my head all the time that I like just don't want to think about it. But you know, I write blog posts for our practice, and that's like really, really nice. But my form of art is like cooking and baking. I love being in the kitchen. I love it.
Oh, does it ever get like tiring for you, or do you still like have the passion?
I love it. I mean, originally when I was in high school, I wanted to go to culinary school. But my mom convinced me like it was not an easy life's journey, and I'm glad that she did. I would have crumbled. But I don't like meal prepping right now because it's like, but I love like the weekends when I can like sit down and like think about like an intricate meal that I can make, like something technically like more difficult or that I haven't had before. And I recently just got more into baking. So I have gotten really good at making like curds and tarts.
Sticking my heart right
yeah. So I've been doing a lot of that. And that's really nice. But So when we moved, finding a kitchen where I can like have
Really
that
throw
good
down.
space is really important, because my husband, he like loves to smoke meat and he likes to cook too. So it's also like something that we can do together. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also what's something that like interesting that you've cooked recently.
So this week for our meal prep, I did like Indian burgers. So like we did like burgers, like ground meat, like lean meat, and then I like seasoned it with like different Indian spices, and then we ate it like on naan with like a peach mango salsa on top.
Oh, wow.
That was really good. Yeah.
The peach mango, really, really with the naan bread. I bet that was delicious.
It was so good. I was really proud of that one. But like we make a lot of tacos too. Like,
oh, can't go wrong there.
Yeah. And to speak of like Indian and tacos, we were just down in Austin for the Fittest Experience, and we went to this like middle of nowhere food truck called the Urban Turban.
Ooh.
And it's an Indian Mexican fusion. So, and then we had like
wow,
a chicken tikka quesadilla, and like
wow.
I want to go back
probably.
just to go to that food truck.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
So, do you think that hot dogs are a sandwich?
That question is very confusing.
Blew your mind, right? You're talking about the burger. Is a hot dog a sandwich? It's got two slices of bread and meat in the middle. I don't think it is.
I mean, I wouldn't say it. It's like an open face sandwich almost.
That's what a burger is, basically. Is a burger a sandwich?
No, a burger's a burger.
That's what I was gonna say. A burger is a burger, but like I feel like the sandwich is the thing, but the burger. So like, okay? How do I word this? If you take like chicken breast and put a bun on either side of it, what is it?
It's a sandwich.
It's a chicken sandwich, right?
Yeah.
So is a burger a meat sandwich?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not gonna say that.
Technically, we can put it under the umbrella of sandwich, but it has its own category.
So a hot dog is an open face sandwich.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you never heard this debate before. So last question on the food thing. Is a taco a Mexican sandwich?
No.
Okay, thank God. Taco's a taco. Let's stick it with that.
Taco's a taco. You can't. People got to stop trying to label everything.
All right, so back to a serious question. We were talking about journaling, and you being a theater kid before, like, and it sounds like cooking is the thing. Is that when you feel the most creative, or let your creative juices out, like during cooking, or do you have another outlet for that?
No, I would say cooking is when I feel most creative, and I've always loved it. I think like before it was the idea of like controlling food, right? And then it really like morphed into watching other people enjoy my food. Food is such a love language,
right.
and like in so many cultures and in so many like, you know, it's how you show someone that you care, and being able to see people enjoy something like that brings me so much happiness.
Right. It's part of so many celebrations, like so many different like milestones in life. So it becomes like a part of our lives, you know?
Yeah.
So we've been talking about like therapy this whole time. Do you, or I'm sure you have, so I'm not going to say do you, what are some of like your anxiety triggers? What are things that like you know that you have to work on to not put you in a place that you don't like to go to, if you're comfortable talking about that?
Yeah. I don't love body talk, right? Which is really hard in a gym space. So I don't really like have any like for like full length mirrors that because I do a lot of body checking. And so that can be really harmful for me. I've shifted away from like talking about weight and calories and things like that. Like I still weigh my food to make sure mostly that I'm getting enough protein in, because that's the first thing that goes for me is like when I'm feeling low, like I just want to eat carbs. So making sure that I have proper protein in my body so that I feel good, because I can tell. I haven't weighed myself in over a year, which is the longest I've ever gone in my life. I got rid of the scale, and that was huge. I think like mostly like those are the big ones, like talking about food. I've changed the way that my Instagram algorithm is by like, I don't follow as many CrossFitters anymore because I was doing a lot of comparison of like, my body used to look like that and it doesn't now. And it's really important to remember, like, most of those people, that's what they're getting paid to do.
Right.
So just try avoiding that kind of stuff. I think that's like the biggest one for me. Those are like my anxiety triggers.
Yeah. And it can be super hard, right? Because those things become a part of your life. Like when you got rid of the scale, did you do like a ceremony for it? Like I know some people do, like burn it, throw it out, like make a spectacle, or did you kind of just throw it out?
Yeah, I told my husband, go put this in the car.
Get rid of it right now.
Put it in the car. It's back in the bathroom now because he weighs himself, like, here and there just to like stay on top of things. But like, I don't have any motivation to look at my own weight. I won't step on the scale at the doctor's. My weight is not part of any of my health issues at this point. So like, you don't really need to weigh me. So yeah, I've learned like, you can say no. Like, no, I would prefer not to be weighed. Thank you.
Yeah. You didn't talk about this at all, like being a people pleaser, but do you ever think you were a people pleaser in life? Because you just talked about you had to learn how to say no.
Oh yeah. I'm still learning that. Those boundaries are really hard for me. Even with my clients, like I'll be like, oh, you know what? Like I can see you at 7:00, even though I'm done work at 7. Like I can just see, I'll put you in. I am definitely a people pleaser. I want people to like me. I want people, I don't like to make people feel bad or sad. So yeah, I would definitely say that like the people pleasing, because I am an extrovert, I have a lot of different groups of friends, and saying no to someone if I'm having a hard day was always really hard. And then, I had a friend say to me, like, I would rather you just be honest with me than like string me along until the day of. Like, just tell me if you don't have the space. And I was like, oh, you're not going to be mad at me if I say no? She's like, no, I would rather you just tell me.
Yeah. Like when people say that too, because I go through some of the same things, it's like, thank you. You also don't know how hard it is for me to just, because I feel like I'm letting you down,
Right.
So, and then you get to the day of and you're like, oh, this is the last thing I want to do today,
Yeah.
Are you the type of person, or have you ever experienced like you're just out at a random place, like say the grocery store, and people walk up to you and start talking to you?
Sometimes, yes. But it's really funny because I was visiting a friend in Georgia last year, and we were like in a boutique, like just looking around. And the woman who was like helping people in the store, like just was like, oh, one of the fitting rooms will be open soon. And then walked away from me. And she went up to my friend and started talking to her, like asking her questions randomly. And after they were done talking, I was like, why do you think she went up to you? And she was like, oh, you have northern energy. Like you have like, don't talk to me energy. And I was like, oh. So I think that I've also mastered a little bit of that. Like I try, like on airplanes, like I try to just put headphones on, like my nose in a book. Like I don't want to, especially like, I was going to a massage therapist and like she knew what I did, and like she just wanted to talk to me about her sex life. And I was like, I am here to relax. Like I'm just going to tell people I'm an accountant from now on because they're not going to ask me about that.
Yeah. Oh my God, that'd be so terrible. You're literally laying on the table. She's trying to talk to you about her sex life.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even believe that. So I was like looking through your Instagram the other day, and I saw one of your posts. You were talking about astrology. Like you talked about having like main character energy. What does that mean? Like, and what does it mean to you to be the main character?
I saw you ask about this in the email, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to say to this because I don't know how to explain it.
That's the best.
So I think like part of the delicious part of being a therapist is knowing that you are a character in someone else's life, right? Like,
right.
My clients will come back and they'll be like, oh, I told my friend that thing you said. And I'm like, you talked about me? Like,
now I'm part of the dialogue.
I'm part of your life. And like my, couples will be like, oh yeah, we were joking around and we used you as like as a bantering piece. And I was like, I love that. Like, it's just, I don't know, something about it feels nice. And I think it's like that idea of being known and seen, which like, that's what I feel like so many people want, is to be known and seen for who they are. I think main character energy is just like, I try to live authentically, and like, I think that that's what like main character energy is for me.
Right.
Because like, when you're reading a book or you're watching a movie, the pieces of that person, even like the inner
Right.
dialogue and the behind the scenes. And like, I like to think that that's what that means, but I'm sure there are many other definitions out there for what main character
I love
energy
it.
means.
Live a real life, you write a real story, you be the real person that's like the main person in the story,
Yeah.
So Mel, it's been a great chat, and I have one last question for you. People out there, I did not send her this in the notes. This is to be freestyle right now. First time she's going to hear it. If you had a couple that you knew like personally, they don't come into your practice, they just they might run into you, they might go to the gym, and they said, Mel, we're unhappy with our sex life. What's one piece of advice you can like give us right now to start working on like us being happier with it? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to like strip back what's happening, right? Because the sex is like, that is the symptom of something else. It's this like the lack of sex or like whatever, difference in libido. That's a symptom of something else happening in the relationship. Okay, so like, why don't you want to have sex? Or like, do you know what is arousing? What is your time like when you're together in general, right? Like a lot of people think, well, we're together all the time, but like, what are you intentionally spending time together, right? Like it's all about the intention. And so I would say like start there. And a lot of times, like what happens is once we get to that point, there's a lacking of intimacy. That's like emotional intimacy. And so I would start with saying like, get to know your partner again. Like keep going on dates and keep asking questions and like really talk to each other about things, because that will bring you closer together and that will make your connection that much stronger. And then that will lead to you feeling like you can ask for your needs to be met, which will then lead to hopefully a better sex life.
I love it. Look back at like the other pieces of your life, like really evaluate your time together. I love that.
Yeah.
That was like a really important one for me. That I try to look at in my relationship. Like, what is our time spent together like?
Mm-hmm.
Do we appreciate it and enjoy all that time? I think that was a great answer. Well, Melanie, it's been a great episode. Thank you for coming on and talking with me. I think everyone's going to really enjoy this. Melanie, you have anything else to say to the people? Like just signing off here?
I think when it comes to therapy, the most important part is the relationship with your therapist. And so like, if they're a good therapist, and they're not a good fit for you, like they're not going to be offended, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to trust them and like have that connection with them, because that is the basis of everything. Like they can have all the techniques in the world, and if you don't connect with them, it doesn't matter. And so immunotherapy doesn't have to be scary. So just give it a shot. I think everyone should be in therapy.
For sure. Everyone has something that they need to talk about.
Even if you just want to talk about like your job and how stressful it is, it's an hour that's completely about you. Where else do we get that in life?
Yeah. Oh, and like that just is therapy self-care? Like I think we know it is, but like to the broader world, is it looked at like self-care? Because I've never seen it put it in that like category, but like that's like what you just described. That is taking care of yourself. Indulge it in yourself. It
is self-care. It's one of the ones that can be like a scarier, more difficult type of self-care, because it's not always going to feel good, but it is. Yeah, that's awesome. So everyone out there listening, man, like go sign up for some self-care. That's what therapy is.